My name is Ilara. My son, Leo, lay in the small hospital bed. He was only 7, so pale and fragile, with a clear oxygen tube clipped to his nose. The rhythmic beep of the monitor was the soundtrack to the end of my world. His breathing was a faint, shallow whisper. Just an hour earlier, his doctor had stood in that same spot. Dr. Morrison, a kind man with weary eyes, told me the standard treatments weren't working anymore. Leo's little heart was weakening faster than they'd thought. So what do we do? I asked, my voice trembling. There has to be something else. He told me there was. An experimental treatment. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot we had left. Hope, a desperate, fragile thing, flickered inside me. I'll do it, I said. Whatever it takes. That's when he told me the price. Insurance wouldn't cover it. The cost was $95,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. The world tilted. $95,000. To a middle school science teacher raising a child alone, he might as well have said 95 million. It was the price of a life, my son's life, and I had maybe 6 months to find it before his time ran out completely. That night, I made the call I never thought I'd have to make. I called my parents. My father, Richard, stood in the doorway of my small, cluttered apartment, his arms crossed, his face a mask of stern disapproval. My mother, Eleanor, hovered behind him, her lips pressed into a thin, tight line. The medical bills were spread across my kitchen table like a deck of losing cards. "We don't have that kind of money just lying around, Alara," my father said. "You need to be realistic about this." "Realistic?" My voice cracked. "My son, your grandson, is dying. The doctor said this is his only chance." My mother stepped forward, placing a placating hand on my father's arm. "Honey, we understand this is difficult, but we've already helped so much. We paid for 3 of his surgeries. We can't just empty our retirement accounts. It wouldn't be responsible." "I'm not asking you to empty them," I pleaded, my voice raw. "I'm begging you for a loan. I'll pay back every single penny, I swear. I'll get a second job, a third job. I'll sell my car. I'll do anything." My father just shook his head, his gaze sweeping over my tiny apartment with a flicker of disdain. "You're barely keeping your head above water now. How could you possibly pay us back? Be sensible. Have you looked into medical financing?" I wanted to scream. For the last 2 weeks, my life had been nothing but looking into those options. I'd been denied by 3 different lenders. The payment plans required a down payment I couldn't afford, and stretched for years. Years Leo didn't have. My voice dropped to a whisper. "I've tried everything. Everything. You're my last hope." For a fleeting moment, my mother's face softened. But then my father spoke again, his voice like stone, and the moment died. "The answer is no, Alara." "I'm sorry. We have to think about our own future. And we have to think about your sister, too. My sister, Serafina. My beautiful, perfect younger sister, the golden child." They left, and I stood at the window, watching their comfortable car pull away, leaving me in a suffocating silence. I walked into Leo's room and watched his small chest rise and fall unevenly. His grandparents had just signed his death warrant, and he didn't even know it. The next few weeks were a blur of shame and desperation. I called every family member I could think of. My Aunt Maeve sent $500 with a note that made me cry, wishing it could be more. It felt like trying to fill an ocean with an eyedropper. I started a crowdfunding campaign online, pouring my shattered heart into every word, posting pictures of Leo before the illness stole the light from his eyes. After 2 weeks, I had raised $12,000. A fortune to me, but a pittance against the mountain I needed to climb. And then, as I was staring at that number on my laptop screen, my phone rang. It was Serafina. Her voice was like champagne bubbles, giddy with excitement. "Ilara! Oh my God, you are not going to believe this." Julian proposed. "We're getting married." I sank onto my couch, trying to force some joy into my voice. That's wonderful, Sarah." Congratulations. I know, right? She gushed. And listen to this. Mom and Dad are being absolutely incredible. They're paying for the entire wedding. They told me there's no budget. Whatever I want. We're thinking maybe a destination wedding. Tuscany, maybe? Oh, Ilara, it's going to be a fairy tale. No budget. 2 words. 2 words that drove a shard of ice straight into my heart. They had no budget for a party, but they couldn't spare a cent for their grandson's life. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it calcified. It turned into something cold, hard, and terrifyingly patient. The months that followed were a living nightmare. Leo's condition worsened. I sold my grandmother's ring for a pathetic $800. I downgraded my car to a rust bucket. I moved us into a tiny studio apartment to save on rent. Every penny went to keeping Leo comfortable, as the hope for a cure faded into an impossible dream. And through it all, like a soundtrack from another, crueler universe, were the wedding updates. Every phone call from my mother was a fresh stab in the heart. "We just did the cake tasting," she'd chirp. "5 tiers, Alara, with hand-sugared flowers. You wouldn't believe the cost, but your father says nothing is too good for Sarah's special day." I started doing the math automatically. The cake could have paid for 2 months of Leo's medication. Another time, it was the venue. The one Sarah loves in Tuscany has a booking fee of $80,000, but the view is just breathtaking. 80,000. Almost the entire amount I needed. I felt the breath leave my body. The worst call came in July. "Honey," my mother began, "Sarah wants you as a bridesmaid." "The dresses are just divine, but they're about $300. We need you to order yours by next week." $300. "Mom, I don't know if I can afford that right now." The warmth in her voice vanished. "Alara, this is your sister's wedding." "I know, but with Leo's medical expenses—" "You're always talking about Leo's medical expenses," she snapped. "I understand he's sick, but life has to go on for the rest of us. Can't you, for once, try to be happy for her?" I hung up the phone and cried until I had nothing left. Not from sadness, from rage. A rage so pure and so deep it scared me. By September, we were out of time. The window for the experimental treatment had closed. The doctors switched to palliative care. The goal was no longer to save my son, but to manage his pain as his body shut down. He stopped talking about being a scientist. He just wanted to know if heaven had dinosaur parks. While my world was shrinking to the size of that hospital room, my family's world was expanding. My mother called to gush about Sarah's bachelorette weekend in Napa Valley. A private villa, a personal chef. It probably cost $10,000, but it was worth every penny to see Sarah so happy. $10,000. Spent on a weekend of wine and massages. The ice in my heart spread to my soul. Then Dr. Morrison gave me the final timeline. "Days," he said, his face grim. "Maybe a week." "You should call your family. Anyone who wants to say goodbye," I called my father. "Dad?" "It's Leo. He's dying. The doctor says it's only a matter of days." There was a pause. I could hear clinking glasses in the background. "Oh," he said, sounding distracted. "Oh, Alara, I'm so sorry. We're right in the middle of rehearsal dinner preparations. Can this wait?" My voice was dead. "No, it can't. Right. Of course. Well, we'll try to stop by tomorrow morning. We can squeeze it in, squeeze it in." They came the next day and stayed for 15 minutes. My mother dabbed her eyes. My father checked his watch twice. Then they left to go argue with a florist about centerpieces. Serafina never came. She was too busy dealing with a crisis. The string quartet she'd hired had to replace their cellist. Leo died on a Tuesday morning. He slipped away in his sleep, his hand in mine. After the ragged sobs tore through me, I made the call. "He's gone, Mom. Leo's gone." There was a pause. Then her first words. "Oh, no. Oh, Alara. What? What terrible timing. Terrible timing." My son's death was an inconvenient scheduling conflict. The grief was a tidal wave, But underneath it, a decision formed, clear and sharp as glass. They had made their choices. Now, I would make mine. I scheduled the funeral for Friday. The wedding was on Sunday. I didn't ask them to postpone. I knew the answer, but I never imagined they would ask me to. My mother called Wednesday evening. "Honey, about the funeral. Friday is just impossible for us. We have the rehearsal and then the dinner. Could you possibly move it? Maybe to Thursday or even next week? It would just work so much better for everyone." I stared at the photo, my face a blank canvas. Then I got up, walked to my desk, and pulled out a fresh notebook. I started to write. Every date, every conversation, every dollar amount. They thought it was over. They were wrong. This was not an ending. It was the beginning. For 4 years, I built a new life from the ashes of my old one. I became someone else. Someone stronger. Someone colder. I worked. I studied. I climbed the ladder from teacher to principal. I lived frugally, saving every spare dollar in a separate bank account I labeled Justice. And I waited. I followed them on social media, watching their perfect lives unfold. Lavish vacations, new cars, and 2 beautiful children for Serafina. My parents doted on them as if they were their first grandchildren. As if Leo had never existed. I knew their world, built on a foundation of selfishness, was a house of cards. All it needed was the right gust of wind. Then, one spring morning, an email arrived from my Aunt Maeve. The wind had finally started to blow. My father's company had collapsed in a massive fraud scandal. He'd lost his job, and their entire retirement, invested in company stock, was gone. They were facing foreclosure. I didn't feel happiness. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt recognition. The universe had finally dealt the cards, and this time I was holding the winning hand. The calls started a week later, my mother, then my father. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, there was a knock at my door. It was my father. He looked like a ghost, gray, thin, and broken. Speaking through the chained door, he told me everything. "We need help, Alara. We're going to lose the house. We need $95,000. $95,000? The exact number. The universe, it seemed, had a flair for poetry. "I'll think about it," I said, and closed the door in his shocked face. I leaned against it, and for the first time in 4 years, a slow, cold smile spread across my lips. The wait was over. The reckoning had begun. I made them wait 2 weeks. Then, I called and summoned them to my apartment, all 3 of them. They sat on my couch, nervous and out of place. I stood before them, a thick folder in my hands. I was in complete control. "I am willing to give you the money," I said. Relief washed over their faces. It was desperate and ugly. "But there are conditions," I continued. "First, you will say it. Out loud. I want to hear you admit that you had the money to save your grandson, and you chose to spend it on a party instead." The silence was thick. Eleanor was sobbing, but my father, his eyes fixed on the floor, finally spoke, his voice a choked whisper. "We chose the wedding. We had the money, and we chose the wedding. And he died because we didn't help." My eyes shifted to my mother. "We were wrong," she cried. "We should have saved him." "Good," I said. "Condition number 2. You will take this money, you will save your house, and then you will disappear from my life, forever. No calls, no cards, no contact. You will remove me from your lives, just as you erased Leo from your memories." I pulled a check for $95,000 from the folder and placed it on the table, beside an agreement I'd had a lawyer draft. "Take the check, sign the agreement. Or leave with nothing. You have 1 minute." They didn't need a minute. Defeated, they signed. Richard's hand trembled. Eleanor's signature was a wet smudge of ink and tears. Serafina signed with a vicious slash. After they took the check and walked out, broken, I sat at my laptop. I opened an email to my Aunt Maeve and attached a document. It was the complete, detailed timeline of everything that had happened, with every receipt, every screenshot, every painful detail. I wrote, Aunt Maeve, I thought the family should know the truth about what happened to Leo. Please share this. I hit send. They kept the house, but it became a prison of their own making. Their friends abandoned them. Their social life crumbled. They were forced to live, every day, in the house bought with the money that cost them their reputation, their family, and their souls. They got to live with their choice. That was their sentence. Some people would call what I did cruel. They would say true forgiveness is letting go. But those people never had to choose between paying for their child's medicine or paying their electricity bill. They never had to listen to their son ask if he was going to die. I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted balance. They taught me that family is conditional and that some lives are worth more than others. I simply gave them back the lessons they taught me, wrapped in a check they couldn't refuse, and a truth they could never escape. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about a mother's love, and I am finally at peace.